you might come across the base of one of these electrically exposed wires that, unless you just enjoy the nice, tingly, warm, fuzzy feeling of being tased by a million tasers. So yeah, avoid that. And also avoid the alleyways, like I said. But even the alleyways, the exposed wires, the dark forest, the red sky, none of that is dangerous when it all comes down to it. Because the real danger here lies with the creatures themselves inside this level. Of course, the level itself is scary, dangerous, and not safe, and I'll talk more about that later, but the entities here are awful. Entities known as predatory pylons lurk here. Now, you might not know where they're at when you get here because they blend in with the electric poles that are in this level, and they pretty much are indistinguishable from the physical appearance of the pole. They're wiry, they're spindly, but they are flesh and blood creatures, and they can move around the level and crush you underneath their huge bases. They typically move when you're not looking at them, which might account for that rustling noise that you kind of hear when you get here. It could be one of them taking a big step and then stopping by the time you turn around. But these entities are the main reason that you should never ever stand still in this level at all. Make sure you're always moving around, make sure you're trying to bob and weave, that way you don't get stepped on. But it's not just these pylon entities that are bad, because it gets even worse. Now, this is not in the official page for the level, but there's been unconfirmed reports of strange, large, shadowy creatures swinging and jumping from electric pole to electric pole. These entities are said to be giant humanoid shadow creatures that are only discernible from their eyes that glow in the darkness. And they typically glow pretty bright. The entities are completely silent and they make zero noise when they swing around. They attack wanderers by reaching down from the poles with their really long arms, and with one quick, silent motion, they scoop them up to never be seen again. Again, this entity is not confirmed, and it has no official name or classification, but there's been multiple reports, multiple pictures of this entity being talked about. So I'm going to choose to believe it's real, and I'm going to choose to warn you about it. Just know that it makes no noise, and it blends in perfectly with the black trees. Try to keep your eyes peeled. So besides the strange pole creatures, the shadow entities, the staticky red sky, the abandoned buildings, the pathways, everything like that, the level also has some non-entity dangers that I hinted at from earlier. Because there's a place deeper down in this level, only accessible through an unknown pathway, that's been nicknamed the Chromal River. This is a dark red liquid river that cuts through the forests of the level. A strange, misty smoke comes off this river constantly, and the river itself is extremely volatile and toxic to be around, especially to touch the water or breathe in the mist that comes off the top of it. It seems to be similar to the compound from real life, chromal chloride, which is a chemical poison here on Earth. But that doesn't matter because, this isn't real life, it's backrooms. But the main thing you need to know is that this liquid should never be touched, never be jumped in, never be breathed in, or anything like that, as the toxins in this chromal compound can get inside your lungs easily. And if you touch it, a series of rashes and bumps and blisters will start to form all over your body until you become this one huge, fleshy mess. This one massive growth of pus-filled human flesh. Now, due to this river being so dangerous to be around, it's recommended to never leave the path that you start on, no matter how scary it seems. You gotta keep going. Don't look back, no matter what's behind you, no matter if there's a giant electric pole walking or if there's a shadow creature swinging from pole to pole, never look behind you. So believe it or not, this level is actually a pretty new discovery, and we still don't know much about it, but we already know of several dangers that pose threats to life. So in order to avoid being snatched up by a shadow figure or stepped on by a pole, you're going to have to exit. And you can do so by finding a dumpster in one of those buildings I mentioned earlier, and getting into it, and trying to escape. But whatever you do when you're here, do not try to no-clip through the sidewalks in the level, as it's thought that if you do this, you will get sent to the void, as if, it couldn't get any worse. Backrooms level 94, aka level motion, is classified as a survival difficulty of 3, and is overall pretty unsafe in general. It takes the appearance of a couple of different things, ranging from a big town, to a stone castle, to green rolling hills, and all of the level is covered in a retro, grainy type effect, kind of like an old movie or a video game. And the entire level is almost like dreamcore, in a way. I know some of y'all like that. The part of the level where the main town is pretty safe, especially during the daytime, since there aren't any entities here, but at nighttime, it can get pretty dicey. In the very center of this town, in the main area, there's actually a fountain that's flowing with almond water. which is kind of cool, I'm not gonna lie. Wanderers have described the feeling of this town as kind of a 1930s stop-motion background, which is pretty campy and cool, to say the least. On the outskirts of the town, there are small houses with furniture and other normal house stuff. There's also retro cars and vans from the 1930s time period, and there's even huge milk vans full of almond milk for the lactose-intolerant crowd among us. Movie said among us, funny. Scattered around the town's roads, there are these things that look like siren poles, but they're actually speakers, and they play really old, campy cartoon music sometimes. Specifically, the sirens only play the music during these safe times, which is daytime, on the level, and then the music will play until nighttime when it gets really unsafe and unstable, and lots of entities start to come out. But I'm going to explain those entities during the entity explanation section of the video. The grassy hills of the level are actually infinite, and they just keep repeating themselves over and over again, but sometimes there will be like a random car parked on the side of the road, or you might run into a water tower that's just there. And sometimes on the top of the hills themselves, there's random pieces of furniture, like chairs or tables, just sitting there. Which is pretty unsettling, I gotta be honest with you. But it's not as unsettling as the transparent hills that are there. Hills that you can literally see through that have castles sitting on top of them. That's terrifying. I mean, that'd be pretty trippy. Like, just imagine walking up to an invisible hill that you can see through and seeing a whole castle just on top. I'm not even sure how my brain would process that, but whatever. You can actually walk up the Invisihill, get an invisible hill, and get to the castle. But the castle area specifically is known for draining sanity, so be sure to carry almond water with you so you don't go off the deep end. Inside of the castle, you'll notice that there is a huge funhouse area. In fact, the entire castle itself is a funhouse, playhouse, whatever you want to call it. It's full of play sets, slides, ballrooms, ball pits, the other typical funhouse stuff. If you wander through this castle enough, you'll actually run into a huge doorway that opens into the throne room, where of course the entity called the Animated King lives. And you'll be tricked into a false sense of security by the Animated King because he seems nice and stuff at first, but he'll actually try to control you instead of helping you. So watch out for that. The Animated King will put you through a test before he turns you into an animation entity, which I'll get into what an animation is in a second. But if you pass this test, you might be sent out of the level, and if you fail, you're probably not going to be leaving anytime soon. Now let's get into some creatures, shall we? So there are actually a lot of entities and creatures here, and they're very dangerous, especially at nighttime. As per usual, you got your regular entities like smilers, skin stealers, hounds, and male death moths, and even death rats, which are slightly less common, but still pretty common. But the level exclusive entity, like I said, is called an animation. These things look like stop-motion characters, but they're very hostile because they attack anything that isn't animated, which is pretty creepy, not gonna lie. And they attack victims based off of what they look like themselves. So like if an animation entity is a claymation character, then it will try to drown its victim in clay. What? Or if the animation entity is like wood or something like that, then it will try to hit its victim with blunt force, and so on and so forth. You get the point. They aren't very smart though, so you can pretty much avoid them with ease. Just make sure you don't get caught by them, or, you'll drown in clay, or be beat over the head by a bat. The other level exclusive entity is called the Robo-Men, which are just retro robot toys from the early 1900s that live inside the castle, and they kind of act like the guards of the castle. And they're really hostile and will instantly attack you if they see you. So just avoid the large walking robots. To enter this weird place, you have to successfully escape the end level and then go to the hub level right after. When you're there, a rectangle hole will just manifest itself in the ground inside of the hub, and it'll slowly start to close over time. And if you want to exit, you can either complete the Animated King's trial and pass it by conquering your fears in animated form, or you can get teleported into level 7, 9, or 53 by randomly going into one of the houses on the hills of the level. So to summarize this pretty interesting level, pretty cool level as well, It's pretty much just a Dreamcore world filled with weird animated and glitchy type things that kind of makes you feel peaceful and at home until you get to the literal invisible hill with a castle on it, where you'll be forced to watch your biggest fears unfold in animation. If you pass, then you can leave, and if you don't, then you're condemned to stay here forever as an animation entity. Pretty neat. So this backrooms level as a whole is classified as a class variable difficulty and is unstable and has varying safeties and varying levels of danger depending on where you're at. And I say that because the level is split up into two different sub-levels so far, and both of them are pretty much fully unexplored. All we have is a few pictures from a wanderer or two that have been here. So first up, we have sub-level 1, and it's so new that we haven't even named it. We're just calling it sub-level 1. But it's classified as a class habitable zone and is very safe.